Good evening, dear viewers. Saudi Arabia, the holy place of Islam, has become a humiliating place for Shias living in there, or even to those who come to pay a visit to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. The Saudi government has long regarded its Shia citizens through the prism of Wahhabi dogma, branding them as unbelievers or suspecting their national loyalties. The Shia, who constitutes 15% of the Saudi population, says that Wahhabi Muslims in Saudi Arabia humiliate and degrade Shias on every possible ground, making them feel outcast. Human rights group speaks of systematic discrimination against Shia Muslims, whether in education, employment and justice. As there are no Shia government ministers, senior diplomats or even high-ranking military officers. Students generally cannot gain admission to military academies. They are subjected to various kinds of harassment and abuse. Even books that insult Shia are published by government agencies and distributed everywhere in the country. Human Rights Watch has previously highlighted that Saudi authorities should treat minority Shia Muslims as equal citizens and should create commissions to investigate arbitrary arrest of Shia, but nothing happened until now. For more on this, we are joined by Dr. Hussein Gharbieh, a professor of political science at Lebanese University. Hello and welcome to Cases, Dr. Hussein.
Hello.
Nice having you on our show. A short report, dear viewers, and we will be right back.
Talking about discrimination against Shiite minority in Saudi Arabia is not only a sensitive issue, but also a taboo in a country controlled by Wahhabi clerics who often regard Shiites as Rafida, which means rejectionists of religion and infidels. Shiites constitute 10 to 15% of the Saudi population and reside mainly in the eastern province, the home to most of Saudi Arabia's oil production. Due to this difference, the Shiite minority have been at odds with the kingdom, which is a Wahhabi majority, and discrimination against them in schools and workforce, in addition to religious and political intolerance. According to Human Rights Watch, local authorities closed, as of July 2008, mosques and prayer centers in the eastern city of Al-Khabar, whose population is predominantly Shiite. In this regard, many Shiite families perform prayers in their homes. Moreover, Dr. Muhammad Al-Hassan from King Saud University stated that decrees issued by the government's religious agencies insult Shiites and promote hatred, violence, and discrimination against them. Some of these decrees ask not to have Shiite teachers in schools, claiming that being a Shiite is being non-Muslim. The discrimination against Shiites extend not only to religious life, but to public life, political life, and work as well. It is almost unfamiliar for a Shiite to hold public office, become an officer in the military, or advance beyond low-level positions in any company. When will Shiites be treated as citizens and acquire their basic rights amid an institutionalized and official governmental and legal discrimination?
Dr. Hussein, do you agree with the report here? Are for real minorities, especially Shia, are suffering from such tremendous amount of discrimination and in various fields?
Well, if you want to talk about the minority, the Shia minority in Saudi Arabia, this report, in fact, it doesn't shed lights on the real life of the Shias in Saudi Arabia. They are not considered even human beings in a way that the way they are treated, even societies who cares for the animals wouldn't agree with the way the Shia are treated in Saudi Arabia. So to this degree that I'm talking about, that they don't have any basic rights in the society. If you want to talk about the rights of the human beings in any society, it is at least to respect their humanity. They are not respected even in this regard. They are deprived of everything. Basically, they are deprived of everything. The
report highlighted that they're not even allowed to be part of major political affairs, despite the fact that they're not allowed to practice their own religion in public. And that's why most of these mosques have been demolished.
Certainly, this is the case. Certainly, this is the case simply because the doctrine of the Wahhabis consider the Shiites as infidels, kafirs, or in Arabic murtaddeen, which is apostates. Once you are apostates, murtad, it means you are kafir, and the Islamic judgment for those who are non-Muslims, particularly those who were Muslims and became apostates, murtaddeen, the judgment is to be killed. This is the judgment in Islam. Murtaddeen should be killed. So they are considered murtaddeen, and the sentence of God regarding to them is to be killed. So this is the way they regard the Shiites. So once they are kafirs, so it means they are not allowed to practice their own beliefs in the society.
Yes, and that definitely explains it.
But the difference here, we have to make sure and to distinguish. They consider them, the Christians and the Jews are believers, but they are not allowed to practice their religion in Saudi Arabia. While for the Shiites, they are not even considered Muslims.
Yes, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask, Doctor, here. Is it only the Shia who are actually, certain discrimination is practiced upon them, or we're speaking about minorities in general who suffer inside Saudi Arabia, whether they belong to Islam or different religion?
Definitely, in Saudi Arabia, the Shiites are treated in a particular way, but the discrimination is against all the minorities in Saudi Arabia, particularly those immigrants who come from Asia to work in Saudi Arabia, like the Indians, the foreigners, the Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankans, Far East. They are all discriminated against. And you find so many cases before the courts in Saudi Arabia, and the complaints from these countries regarding their expatriates in Saudi Arabia, how they are treated. It's disgraceful. This is the way.
Okay, Doctor, how can we actually describe the living condition of these minorities when speaking about, of course, where they are living? Are they spread in Saudi Arabia, or they live in certain areas, and that's the only areas that probably they can at least practice their own rituals in a peaceful area? That means they cannot blend or even mingle within the Saudi society.
It happens that the Shias in Saudi Arabia, the majority of them are on the eastern side of the Saudi Arabia, overlooking the Gulf, Persian Gulfs. The majority of the Shias live there. But do they practice their belief freely there? Definitely not, because the Emir of the area belongs to the Saudi families. And the instructions there is very clear. The Shias shouldn't be practicing their own beliefs and shouldn't be allowed to express their belief freely in the society.
But can we say it is better than other areas when speaking about the eastern province of Saudi Arabia? That means Al-Qatif and Khubar, and of course Qawamiyya, where a lot of Shia are actually located over there. Do they have wider chance to actually be who they want to be, rather than mingling within Saudi community in Riyadh or any other area?
We cannot say they have more freedom, simply because the number of the Shias in the eastern part is larger, much larger than the Shias in other parts of the Saudi Arabia. So the issue or the practicing could be observed more, while it is nearly next to zero in Medina or Riyadh or Qatif or these areas. But in the eastern part of it, because the majority live there, you find the discrimination clearly shown there. The heavy-handed policy of the Saudi authorities is clear there. The opposition to the Saudis is clearer there. So because of the majority
and
of the Shias. And
even the protests, we witnessed them there in Al-Qatif.
It's there because of the majority of the Shia live there.
Located over
exactly. There. So that's why we see them they are more obvious than other places in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Doctor, what are the reasons today, if one wants to analyze, behind such actions, in your own opinion?
Well, here, if you want to talk about it logically and objectively, there are two main reasons. The first one, that the Wahhabi doctrine not only consider the Shias are infidels, even some Sunni groups who opposes the Wahhabis consider sometimes, according to the political situation, infidels as well. Like during the Ottoman Empire, the Wahhabis consider the Hanafis are infidels, although they are Sunnis, and they constitute a very large segments of the Sunni community in the world. they are considered infidels by the Wahhabis. But the way they practice or the way they show their discrimination is different than the way they show discrimination against the Shiites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely, according to international news agencies, they say that despite decades of repression by the Saudi royal family, Shiite protests against the government have continued, as we mentioned, in the eastern province. According to the Lebanese Al-Akhbar English newspaper, translated from the Arabic version, Saudi official media often describe anti-government protesters as rioters. And the Adala Center for Human Rights says Saudi authorities are responsible for the death of more than 15 people since February 2011. So we're not only speaking about discrimination, but also we're speaking about fatwas, and I've actually collected some for Saudi scholars giving permits to actually attack Shia Saudis.
Yes.
To that extent, and of course here the Adala Center registered that more than 15 have been registered since 2011 and until 2013.
When you talk about the Shias in Saudi Arabia, it's a very precarious issue, simply because it has two
implications probably.
Because the religious one and the political one. The religious one simply because the Shia are loyal to and believe that Imam Ali should be the rightful Khalifa after Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, peace be upon him.
This is totally rejected by the Wahhabis. So this is the main difference on religious ground. The political one is even more dangerous than the first one, simply because we have Iran on the eastern side of the Gulf, Persian Gulf, and Iran is dominated by the Shias, so they consider the Shias in Saudi Arabia as agents, Iranian agents in the area. They don't consider them really, exactly. They don't even consider them as real citizens there, although the Shias in Saudi Arabia well before they lived there, well before the Wahhabis. But so the two issues here, religious and political, are intermingled here when the Saudi authorities look at the Shias in the kingdom. So the Shias in the kingdom are sort of cornered, and in a way helpless, cannot get help from international community, simply because Saudi Arabia, and this is a political issue as well, is allied to the United States of America, where the American army in fact exists in the eastern province, where the oil fields do exist, in the Shia dominated area.
Exactly.
So they have to be suppressed by the Americans and by the Saudis. So the Saudis are given the green light to do what they do by the Americans.
Okay, so Doctor, therefore it's not a new thing that has been going on here in Saudi Arabia, but it's a long term for sure. They were years ago, and still now decrees come out every now and then, actually coming out with more fatwas to actually oppress these minorities. So it's not a new thing that is happening now.
It's not. As I said,
it started a long time ago.
The Wahhabi doctrine considered the Shias as infidels. And the Wahhabis emerged over 100 years ago, even more. So in their doctrine, the Shias are the main enemy. The Shias are considered worse than the Christians and the Jews, according to the doctrine of the Wahhabis. No, the Wahhabis in particular, Wahhabis, not the Sunnis. We have to distinguish here between the two. The Wahhabis consider the Shias are a Jewish
spies or agents
or creation, a Jewish creation. So the Shias are not true Muslims. In fact, they are created by the Jews, according to the Wahhabis.
As if it's a Jewish conspiracy here.
Exactly, in order to destroy Islam. So that's why the Wahhabis consider the Shias more dangerous than the Jews and the Christians. That's why their fight today is directed mainly against the Shiites.
So there are different reasons here for attacking these minorities inside Saudi Arabia, not only for being who they are, but also for the country that is supporting them and for the belief that they have, the Wahhabis, that these are Jewish agents that are ready to actually bomb Saudi Arabia at one point or another, or even flame the country. Doctor, here my question is that are these practices, violent practices done by the Saudi government or even by the Saudi individuals who are belonging to Wahhabism or even to Sunnis? Is that practiced only by the monarchy?
The policy here is clear. It is a policy that is has credibility in the Saudi society. The discrimination is clear even in the mosque, where the muftis of the kingdoms, they practice fatwas, or they issue fatwas instigating violence against the Shiites to the degree of killing them. To the degree of killing them. Even not far away, it's only a short while, nearly a year or two, 2 years ago, I think, one of the muftis in Saudi Arabia attacked the Grand Marja of the Shiites in Iraq and considered him a heretic or infidel as well. So they don't have a respect even to the highest religious authority of the Shiites in the world. So let alone any ordinary Shia members in the kingdom.
Okay, of course, we're speaking more about the decrees that are issued by the government religious agencies inside Saudi Arabia, including, of course, the fatwas that are also considered vital by most of the Wahhabis inside Saudi Arabia. And unfortunately, they've been practicing these fatwas on the Shia over there. Dear viewers, we will take a first break in today's episode and be right back. Stay tuned.
Beyond the lines, beyond the surface. Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
Dear viewers, welcome back. The Adala Center for Human Rights also highlighted that 60 people have been injured since February 2011 and that 179 detainees remain in jail, including 19 children under the age of 18. Shia's activists say, "For 100 years we have lived in fear, injustice and intimidation. Local citizens, Dammam, the largest city in the area, has no Shia cemetery." Of course, here by highlighting more points highlighted also by some important, whether newspapers or even agencies or NGOs inside Saudi Arabia and outside, we're shedding the light more on violations that are practiced. Here, let me highlight the decrees that comes from government religious agencies, of course, that promote hatred, violence, or even discrimination against them. These decrees are said that are made available through text messages, print, or even audio cassettes and promoted on the internet site. To what extent, Doctor, are such decrees issued by government religious agencies causing this kind of hatred, whether from between among Saudis themselves, whether they are Wahhabis or even Shia?
No, it's clear. The issue of discrimination by the muftis and religious people in Saudi Arabia, let alone the politicians.
So they are playing a pivotal role here.
Definitely. I mean, they are they have the pivotal role in instigating hatred against the Shias. In fact, they promote it as well. And this promotion of violence against the Shias is not only limited to Saudi Arabia, but to other parts of
Persian Gulf countries.
And even Syria and Lebanon, wherever there's Shia, the hatred is directed against them. Even the bombing last week in Lebanon, against the Iranian embassy. This is part of the instigation of hatred against the Shiites.
Okay, so it's not only affecting the Saudi community, but also moving on into more countries.
Let me put it this way. In Saudi Arabia, discrimination is against everybody that doesn't agree with the ruling elite in the kingdom.
Okay.
But it has more effect on the Shias because not only they are opposition, but because they are Shias and they oppose the doctrine of the Wahhabis. So the issue here is doubled regarding the Shia. They're under the highlights more than any other minority in Saudi Arabia. Imagine in Saudi Arabia, discrimination is not only against the living Shias, even those who died. The Shia who died are not allowed to be buried in Muslim cemeteries.
Cemetery, yes.
Because they are kafirs, infidels. So it shouldn't be even buried in Muslim cemeteries. Look at the discrimination, even after
Doctor,
the death.
Do you think that actually, yes, even after their death, and that's a very important point, they don't even have respect for the dead people? Do you think that human rights organizations today around the world are actually documenting these strong and sharp sectarian things happening inside Saudi Arabia? Are they doing enough, in your own opinion, in actually covering up?
It's clear. I mean, the issue of discrimination for these such human rights organizations, it's clear that Saudi Arabia won on the top list of those who violate human rights. This is the only thing they can do. Just they can publish some reports, and they do publish it when they have complaints from those people who are oppressed. They send such complaints to the human rights organizations, or those organizations who deals with the Shias or minorities in Saudi Arabia reflect what's happening to these human rights organizations outside in Europe or in America. But what can they do apart from just writing a report stating that there's a violation of human rights in Saudi Arabia? That's all they can say. This is the only thing they can do. In Saudi Arabia, there are prisoners, not only Shias. There are non-Shias prisoners.
Conscious.
In Saudi Arabia, Sunnis, they have been jailed for quite a long time without a trial.
Exactly.
So discrimination is not
expressing their own opinion, or probably against the monarchy.
But as I said, it's coupled for the Shias because of the belief and because they are the opposition, not only because of the belief.
Okay. Yusur Al-Bahrani, journalist and human rights activist, joined us from Toronto. Hello and welcome, Yusur, to Cases.
Hello, thank you.
Yusur, religious books that are being taught in universities insult Shia using demeaning words when describing them and calling them Rafida, which means rejectionists of religion. How do you see that today?
Well, it is, according to the report, it is just continuing, and this is not really the only issue. Using those terms is actually letting other people not sympathize with the people who are oppressed. Let us say, if you continuously, if the Saudi government continuously exercises discrimination against the population, if the kids from day one in school, from grade 1 or from the kindergarten, being called that he or she is a Rafidite, then what we expect that kid to be 20 years from that day. Those are extremely important and dangerous issues that should be discussed very often. This specific issue is actually affecting the entire country, because in the Arabian Peninsula, when Shiite protesters are being detained, we don't really see a lot of sympathy from the other people, from the other activists from the different sects, simply because the government is actually telling everyone that it is okay to arrest Shias.
You actually highlighted. Yusur, you actually highlighted a very important point, saying that basically these books that have been distributed in universities and schools in order to disallow other Saudis who belong to different religion to sympathize with the Shias when they are kidnapped or arrested by the monarchy.
Yeah.
So that's a strategy that they are working upon here.
Yeah, it is. It's something that they have been working on since years and years. And I really want to quote Sheikh Al-Namar, who is a political prisoner in Saudi Arabia. In one of his speeches, he said that using terms such as liberal, Islamist, Shia, Sunni, those are the terms that the Saudi government is actually using to discriminate against the pro-democracy
allow me here
in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, allow me here to take the opinion of Dr. Hussein Gharbieh. Dr. Hussein, of course, she highlighted the point that I just repeated here, and I'm sure that you actually understood what I was trying to say. Doctor, to what extent will this actually cause strife among the nation, among people within Saudi Arabia?
In fact,
when they're being fed from kindergarten with these terminologies and these ideas towards
In fact,
Shia.
I was going to make a sort of to say a word regarding the books that are distributed in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
You said the universities. I wanted to correct that. It's not the universities. It is starting from year 1 in the schools.
Continuing to the universities.
So they feed knowledge for the young people, teach them hatred against the Shias. They consider them, as I said,
to ban them from sympathizing
once these children are fed
Shia
with such hatred, once these children are fed with hatred, since their childhood, they grow up fearing the Shias and consider them enemies straight away, because they have been brainwashed since they were 6 years old. So it is a deliberate policy by the Saudis in order to create this rift between the Shias and the Sunnis.
So it's a plan that has been worked upon a long time ago in order to disallow them from sympathizing with each other. And by that, of course, causing this kind of disunity between the one nation in Saudi Arabia. Yusur, as a human rights activist, I know that you've been working closely with certain families from Al-Qatif. Have you witnessed certain discrimination and hatred and violence that's been practiced upon these families? If you can recall some of the stories that you just met.
Well, there are really many stories, and today there was maybe many of us have seen the news that. There is actually a charge against 11 of the youth or the young men. It's called the Cell of Terrorism charge, which is very, very vague charge in order to attack the peaceful protesters. And 5 of those 11 young men have been, the prosecutor demanded that they would be crucified, simply because they demanded their rights in the peaceful process. Now, this is one case that we are seeing in the recent 2 days. There is also another case that we have seen in Saudi Arabia, and this is called the 23 case. And the 23 are young men from different walks of life, from different educational backgrounds. But what really makes them the same is that they are pro-democracy activists, they are bloggers, they are people who have done a lot of human rights activism work, they are people who have participated in peaceful protests. And unfortunately, some of them have been assassinated by the Saudi government, while others have been arrested, and some of them, and others on the wanted list, the Saudi government is searching for them. One of the cases that I worked on was Abbas al-Mizra and his brothers. Abbas is one of the 23, is in the 23 list. And the Saudi authorities, the Saudi police, they have raided the Abbas.
You meant Abbas al-Mizra?
Abbas al-Mizra.
Yes, and his own brothers they were detained.
Yes, all of them were detained. I have some were released, but Abbas is still in a prison, and Abbas has spent around 4 months in solitary confinement. And the way that they have arrested him and his brothers was very, very brutal. The tanks surrounded the home, and they threatened the women and children. They opened fire, and they were almost burning the home. His sister was telling me that they almost died of suffocation, and after that they even took the women and children barefooted to the police station, and it was really terrible and horrific.
Okay,
and really
Yusur, you're speaking and highlighting details of the way of the arrest. Does that mean that, from what I can understand, is that you can easily get access to the information that you want, or at least get an interview with with Abbas, for example, or even his own brothers?
Well, of course I cannot interview Abbas right now because he's detained, and the Saudi authorities have breached the UN declaration, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights about the right to media to actually be in touch with the detainees and to have public trials, so that all of us can document and see what's going on.
Yes, but meaning as a journalist today, do you have an easy access?
But I talk to his family.
But as a journalist today, do you have an easy access to get more information about the living conditions of these Shia in Al-Qatif, or even Al-Khubar, or even Al-Qawamiyya? Is it easy for you to actually get more information about how they've been treated by the monarchy, or even the way of the arrest?
No, it's not at all easy. It's not at all easy. I have established some contacts. I do have some contacts from the activists themselves, who are very, very brave to talk to me, to talk to the media. They are extremely brave, because there is code of silence. If you have seen the case of, for example, Zakaria Al-Safwan, one of his sentenced to 10 years in prison, and one of the charges is talking to foreign media. That was one of the charges that made him receive this long sentence. So it is not at all easy, and even as journalists working on those issues, I myself get threatened. Although I'm living here in Toronto, I get threatened all the time for reporting on Saudi Arabia. While when I report on other human rights violations in other countries, I have never received any threats.
Okay.
Allow me here. It is not. No.
Okay, let me please ask you, Dr. Hussein Gharbieh. Of course, it's even hard to actually get someone to speak about the subject with us in cases. Most of them are threatened, as Yusur actually highlighted. Does that actually justify the fact why we do not have more information about what's really going on over there through international NGOs like Human Rights Watch or even Amnesty International? Because it's every now and then that they issue documents or even reports highlighting issues like that. Is that justified because they do not have enough access?
The way the Saudi regime is practicing his policies is very discreet, in a way that they do not allow people, NGOs or international organizations, to come to Saudi Arabia to investigate what's going on. They always want to show that Saudi society is a harmonious society,
peaceful society.
Peaceful society. We don't have opposition. These are only Iranian agents who want to instigate troubles in the society, and they sort of put a blind eyes in order to prevent organization from carrying out investigation about what's going on regarding these minorities. So there's a deliberate policies by the authorities in order to prevent showing the real picture in what's going on in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, before taking our short break, a final question to Yusur. Yusur, are there certain steps that you're taking, of course, on a unilateral basis in order to help these political people arrested inside Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, I do believe that there should be more awareness here in the West, especially because our government is really complicit, is really involved heavily with this, because they are allies to Saudi Arabia. Therefore, there is silence.
So raising awareness can actually help here.
They are political. They are political allies to the Saudi government. So that's why there isn't a lot of media coverage here. The other thing is that talking to, of course, to to international human rights organizations has been very effective. We have seen a lot of statements from Human Rights Watch, and from Amnesty International. Human Rights Watch had a very huge statement about the case of Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, and we have seen in the annual report of Amnesty International a section on the discrimination against the Shia minority in Saudi Arabia. So I'm not saying there is a lot of movement. We can see that there is a progress in the reporting. However, the Saudi government is not responding. So this is a huge issue, whether the Saudi government shall respond to the recommendation of the human rights organizations and to the human rights activists or not. The thing that I really want, and I would appreciate if I see more people doing it, is being in solidarity, retweeting what the activists in South Qatar are posting, for example, on Twitter, sending solidarity messages to them. Those are things that really will make people feel the support, feel happy, feel encouraged, enthusiastic. They do need to feel that they are not alone, that the world is watching. So those are the steps that I feel should be taken. And yeah,
but eventually, Yusur, of course,
Yusur,
we've been speaking a lot about raising awareness and how a lot of organizations can play a pivotal role here by stating what's actually going on the ground and give more push to these minorities who have been discriminated in certain areas, a push and to be optimistic about their own cases. But here, are you saying that will such area, with such circumstances, give them more power to actually lead or to take an uprising or to move towards an uprising inside Al-Qatif, more of what we've seen in the past?
I'm talking as a journalist and an activist.
Yes.
My intention and my goal is to eliminate all the human rights abuses in Qatar.
Yes.
Now,
but can that happen through an uprising?
It's up to them. It's up to them to lead an uprising or not. But my duty is to make sure that it is safe for them to go to protest, that they are not being persecuted simply for their peaceful protest. They are not being persecuted because they want to practice their Shiite rituals in their mosques, that they are not being arrested just for their faith, that the progressive, but I mean the faith leaders who are the Shiite faith leaders who are now in prison, like Sheikh Tawfiq al-Amr or like Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr.
Yes.
They are the most progressive faith leaders that we have seen in the Arabian Peninsula, but yet the government is really scared from the progressive voices. They don't want a progressive voice. So my goal is not to have, it's up to them to have an uprising, but I want all of those political prisoners and prisoners of conscience to be out, to be free, and to practice their rights.
Unfortunately, most of the time, just like speaking about the news is not enough. When the people uprise, they will gain their own rights. Yusur Al-Bahrani, journalist and human rights activist, thank you for joining us from Toronto. Dear viewers, we will take a final break and be right back. Stay tuned.
Time. Variable. Event. The only constant variable in life is change. Broader perspective. Arguments and counter-arguments on our platform.
Global Insights. The globe on our platform.
Okay, Dr. Hussein, of course you wanted to comment on what Yusur actually highlighted here. Is there anything that you would like to say?
Yes, something about uprising was mentioned in order to help the oppressed Shias in Saudi Arabia. Personally, I don't advise of any uprising in the Shia-dominated area in Saudi Arabia for some basic reasons. If you want to have an uprising, it means you are calling for massacres to be committed against the Shias. They are already confined, they are already suppressed, let alone discrimination against...
Then what can be the solution here, Doctor?
There is no solution here. The only thing available for the Shias in Saudi Arabia is to keep calm now. Let's not forget...
Surrender?
Not surrender. I'm not saying surrender here. The circumstances here are not viable to them in order to start an uprising. Let's not forget Saudi Arabia for the Shias invaded Bahrain to suppress this revolution there.
But eventually in some countries we've seen how uprisings actually led to the toppling of a dictatorial regime.
Yes, but not the minorities who toppled the regime, it's the majorities who toppled the regimes. Let's not forget that the Shias in Saudi Arabia are minorities. You just mentioned Europe, it's between 10 to 15% of the population. These cannot topple a regime. They will not even get the support from outside supporters simply because they are confined in a way that cannot even breathe. The only help they can get is from Iran directly, and Iran is surrounded. In the Gulf, there is the American fleets, and you have the
Fifth Fleet in Bahrain.
Exactly. So
it's kind of impossible, you're saying.
It is impossible right now. It is really impossible. The only way to topple the regime in Saudi Arabia is by the Sunnis themselves.
Yes.
With the help of the Shias. But the Shias cannot do that.
Because Bahrain, they are minorities.
In Bahrain, they are the majority even. In Bahrain, they are 70% of the population, and they couldn't even topple the regime in Bahrain, which is only
of course, that proves of how complicated things are inside
So the issue is not only
Saudi
internal.
Arabia.
The issue is not only internal, it's regional and international. We have to take into our consideration the regional powers regarding what's going on and the will of the international community, whether they would allow such an uprising or not.
Okay. Doctor, to what extent is Saudi Arabia violating the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination that it's a signatory of?
It's clear. They broke all the clauses of the international organization regarding human rights, in Saudi Arabia. There's even one little segment that the Saudis are fulfilling regarding the human rights of the Shias in the country. Imagine in Saudi Arabia, there is in the eastern side of it, one of the reports mentioned, over 300 schoolgirls in Saudi Arabia. There isn't even one single principal for them.
Yes.
They're all Wahhabis. So even the Shia, they are dominated by, the schools are dominated by Shia students, are not allowed to have one Shia principals. Look at this kind of discrimination. In addition to that, they are taught subject in these schools discriminating against the Shias.
Okay. Eventually, this lack of trust between the monarchy and of course the citizens inside Saudi Arabia, what would it lead to?
May I stop you here? They are not considered citizens. In Saudi Arabia, the Shias are not considered citizens because they are not respected.
Probably that's where the problem
lies.
Yes,
they are not considered citizens because they are kafirs. They should be eliminated, but they cannot commit massacres openly, so they're doing it discreetly.
We're actually joined by Aly Adubisi. He's from European Saudi Society for Human Rights and joining us from Berlin. Hello and welcome, Mr. Aly.
Yes, hello. Welcome.
Mr. Aly, of course, you've been speaking about the subject here, but what kind of discrimination against minorities in Al-Qatif specifically have your organization registered?
Yeah, first of all, I believe it's helpful to historically address this issue. I think that discrimination in the region has excited since founding of Saudi Arabia in 1902 and until the present time. Basically, the discrimination in Saudi Arabia is a political discrimination, where everyone outside of the political zone, which include royal ruling family and their religious leaders, elites and some others, are subjected to discrimination. whether it's a region, a tribe, or any ideological or intellectual belief. Different than the official adopting view. Therefore, limiting the discrimination term to the Qatif region or to the Shia lead to lack of understanding and confusion of the discrimination in Saudi Arabia. But this idea was enforced and supported politically.
Okay.
This discrimination, this discrimination.
Yes, Mr. Ali.
This discrimination existed due to the form of government and political ideological, which is absolute monarchy, resulting in ultimate governing authority as a head state and head government in Saudi Arabia, leaving no chance for a democratic atmosphere which is dominated political structure worldwide. Therefore, leaving the civil society absolutely no chance to practice, and up until now, civil society are banned. As a result, the suffrage and Qatif is a part, the important thing, what I want to say, the suffrage and Qatif is a part of the whole political discrimination picture which is practiced by government in the rest of nation as well as the denial of the right political participation, limiting freedom in various aspects.
Okay. Mr. Ali, actually you highlighted and sent to me exactly saying that more than 200 detainees who were detained in year 2011 when they were protesting inside Saudi Arabia are now in year 2013 are in massive threat of being sentenced to life imprisonment or even to death sentencing. You've highlighted that. Can you tell me more about this? From where did you get these information?
Please, I didn't hear you.
Yes, Mr. Ali?
Pardon, please repeat your question.
Yes, speaking about the 200 detainees who were actually detained in year 2011 and now they are in threat of being sentenced to life imprisonment.
I think there are four main points in this question.
Yes.
There is a political determination in the government to hide the reality. To illustrate that one, when the foreign minister of Saud Al-Faisal was asked if the Arab Spring will come to Saudi Arabia, he said yes, but no one will cover it. Second point, many media outlets, including print media, broadcast media, and internet media, are on Saudi capital prints and others. The third point, communicate with the media and expressing your opinion freely is officially criminalized and in the local media, not independent. The fourth point, unfortunately, media bases excited due mutual benefit, resulting in misleading and regional or international news.
Mr. Ali, in few words, unfortunately we're running out of time here. What will your expectations be if such oppression against Shia minorities in Saudi Arabia continues? From your own perspective, Mr. Ali.
I think if this case, it will continue. The Saudi Arabia international community will no longer trust in Saudi Arabia reports on human rights.
Yes.
Also, Saudi will lose its credibility in the international community and become unworthy of membership in the Human Rights Council, which will be extended for another up to 2016. I think there is some evaluation happening in Saudi Arabia. All society important about human rights should to know. For example, arrest human rights activities as Sheikh Numar and Fadl Al-Manasif and formerly Mukhlif Al-Shimmari and membership of Hassim Society Group. Also, beginning human rights and other civil organization Al-Adala Center. Human rights has been in 13 seasons in Saudi courts. So far fight for a license, a practice defending human rights officially, but unfortunately government don't give him any chance. Also now, recently, there is 18 martyrs who were killed by Saudi force directly shot at them
Of course,
face and arrest.
we are hoping that, of course, all these political prisoners who are, of course, got a very important role inside Saudi Arabia, such as Nimr, to be released immediately and eventually with the effort that your organization will actually keep in that. Mr. Aly Adubisi from the European Saudi Society for Human Rights, joining us from Berlin. Thank you very much, Doctor. In very few.
But if you have 30 seconds only, I will add important information.
Please.
Before 1 week, the court might be killed 10%. One of them is Sheikh Nimr, and 9 recently in last week. The government court won't kill him only because they are arrested, and there is some people sentenced by 10 years by only they write small article, and there is many issue. We will report it in our organization, European Saudi Society for Human Rights.
And of course,
just
we will be
our organization, and we will provide about all.
We will be in direct contact with the European Saudi Society for Human Rights, Mr. Aly, to get more information for more episodes to come, speaking about, of course, discrimination practiced upon Shia. This is not the last episode to speak about that. More information we will be covering throughout the days, hopefully. Thank you very much again for joining us, Dr. Hussein Gharbieh. Unfortunately, our time is up. Of course, as I said, we will have more episodes to speak about our own subject. Thank you very much for joining us inside in Cases. Thank you for being with us. Dear viewers, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for watching, and our episode will be streamed on Twitter via YouTube, followed by the hashtag Qatif. Please watch it there. Thank you again for watching us.